India-US trade dynamics. Now, well, Donald Trump said many things about India. He said, he also had something really good to say about Prime Minister Modi. He said that he's a fantastic leader. Then he also spoke at length about India. But there's one thing which he prominently spoke about, which is the trade dynamics and also how India is a quote-unquote very big abuser of India-US trade ties. Well, there's the two leaders, that is Prime Minister Modi and former President Donald Trump, are set to meet in US when Prime Minister Modi will be there for a visit, even as he's made it, Donald Trump has made it absolutely clear that in his administration, expect more tariffs. In fact, he goes on to say that 200% tariffs could be levied on specific items. Listen in to what Donald Trump had to say. We come back and talk more specifically about the India-US trade relationship and how it could pan out in a Trump 2.0 administration.
So when India, which is a very big abuser, he happens to be coming to meet me next week, and Modi, he's fantastic. I mean, fantastic man. A lot of these leaders are fantastic. You have to understand one thing. They're 100%. These people are the sharpest people. They're not a little bit backward. They are at the top. You know the expression, they're at the top of their game, and they use it against us. But India is very tough. Brazil is very tough. There are certain countries, I can tell you every one. I can give you from top to bottom.
All right, that's our big debate. And in fact, the questions that we are asking as far as India Global, we can have that on our screens, which is that do facts back Trump's accusations when it comes to India's trade relationship? Secondly, what will the India-US ties look like under Trump 2.0? And thirdly, how will high US trade tariffs, of course, impact the Indian market? We have... Well, I have Dilip Sinha, who's a former permanent representative of India to the UN, and we also have Jayant Krishna, senior fellow at the CSIS. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global. Let me start with you, Jayant Krishna. Some of the commentary that Donald Trump made in his first presidency, he said that India was tariff king. He also in 2019 terminated India's preferential access, which is the generalized system of preferences. So there's a history of how Trump treats trade relationship with India. Do you expect that to be doubled down in, if at all he comes back to power in his second term with India?
See, if you look at, history of relationship between India and the US with Trump as the leader, if that was any indication. Look at Trump invariably takes decisions, which favor the US business, and he doesn't care much about, how the relationship with the other countries, emerge. But having said so, the fact is, even if you look at our chief economic advisor, Government of India's, he talks about that the average applied, tariff, on merchandise products that India has, obviously for all countries put together, that average rate is about 8.3%. If you see the same rate in China, it is lower than us, it's 7.5%. The US import, the average tariff is about 3.4%. So India's import tariff has been high. There is no doubt about that, and one reason is that India has been trying to protect its domestic industry, but somehow I don't subscribe to that viewpoint of India at all, because, what happens if you protect your domestic industry beyond the point by having a high import duty? Obviously, the likes of Trump will always keep talking about it. But the fact is, lot of our exports, which are dependent on imports from other countries, US, China, and Europe, European Union and elsewhere, they get adversely impacted. So you have to have a reasonable import duty, and just by raising the duty, you don't necessarily patronize and help local industry. So I think
that's a single specific view, because most of these import duties are particularly with regard to steel and some of those sectors where a lot of effort has been made to ensure that the industrial capacity at home is protected. But Jayant Krishna, the larger question, some of what Dilip Sinha some of what Jayant Krishna is saying right now is not new. It has already been said. It was said in the previous administration as well that India needs to open up. But the question is, this is only for specific industries, whether it is steel, whether it is power, it is those specific industries. It's not across the board. India's import duties, yes, you can take out an average, but some of the other sectors we've opened up completely. So is the commentary by Donald Trump, do you think, justified, or do you think it's just, painting everything with too broad strokes?
Are you asking me? Sorry.
Yes, sir, I'm asking you.
Yes. Okay, I would read Donald Trump's statement as part of his election campaign, because the point that I think he was trying to make was that he is the one person who's capable of dealing with these strong leaders outside. He kept emphasizing that leaders outside are very strong, they're very clever. And he was trying to, I think, make the point that he has the experience to deal with these strong leaders, which means that by comparison, the Vice President Kamala Harris does not have that kind of experience of that quality. So I would read in that context. So it is true that Trump is very protectionist and he's also slightly isolationist. But the policy on protectionism has become bipartisan in the US. President Biden has broadly continued Trump's policies. And the primary concern that America has in this is China, because the deficit to China is very high, and the exports from China to America are about 8-9 times India's exports. India also has a trade surplus with the US, and India must ensure that that trade surplus does not become a trade dispute, because America is our largest market and we need this market. So we will have to, of course, keep the Americans in good humor to ensure that we
Are
do
you
not
saying a
become
lot of this is trade
the
rhetoric? Are you saying a lot of this is actually election rhetoric?
Yes, as I said that the Trump statement right now is clearly electoral rhetoric, because he wants to show to the American people that he is the leader who is strong enough to deal with tough leaders around the world. Which is why he said that India is an abusive country, which means that India needs to be dealt with in a tough manner, and he is the person who can deal with India in a tough manner. And he's met other leaders, and he mentioned that there are other leaders who are extremely tough and extremely clever. So he wants to tell the American voters that if they want a strong leader, which is what America needs today, it is he and not Kamala Harris.
All right, I'm afraid we're completely out of time. Thanks much, gentlemen, for taking out the time in this edition of India Global. With that, it's a wrap.